why did Jimin say, "Thank you, Jeon Jungkook," at the end of the night? A night never to be forgotten. Emotional stories from behind the scenes of Los Angeles. It was a night in Los Angeles, not an ordinary night. Not the night of the stage, not the night of the press conference, nor the night when the spotlights were aimed at the K-pop stars as usual. It was a quiet night. But it was precisely in that silence a moment was created that made Jimin's heart full. So full, until one sentence is enough to represent all of them. "Thank you, Jeon Jungkook." After a day in the studio, rearranging songs for BTS's next big project, Jimin was noticeably quieter than usual. Although he is known as a cheerful and smiling person, there are certain moments where his eyes are like a sea of words that have never been said. That day, Jungkook caught all of it. As usual, without having to ask a long question, Jungkook simply sat beside him, replaying the demo version of the song they recorded this afternoon, and asked, "Are you sure about this lyric, Hyung?" Jimin just nodded slowly. But Jungkook knew there was something Jimin buried too deep. After the recording session was over and all the staff went home, only the two of them stayed in a small room with dim light. Jungkook, realizing that Jimin was not doing well, brought his chair closer and opened the conversation in a low tone. "You know, I also once felt like no one could really hear me." Jimin nodded slowly. In front of him sits a younger sister who has been with him since they were just young trainees in Big Hit's old dorm. A younger sister who witnessed his ups and downs. And the only person who knows how heavy a burden he bears as one of the most emotional faces in BTS. That night, unscripted, without a camera, Jimin began to tell stories. About fatigue, guilt for smiling too much for the camera, fear that he is no longer able to convey emotions through songs wholeheartedly. Jungkook did not respond with words of wisdom. He's just listening, wholeheartedly, without interrupting. Then, as Jimin stopped and his eyes began to glaze over, Jungkook stood up, pick up a small acoustic guitar in the corner of the room, and start strumming the strings gently. He sang a short verse, not a BTS song, not a popular song either, but a song they both made a few months ago and haven't released yet, the lyrics of which read, "If you can't speak today, I will be your voice." At the end of the verse, Jimin lowered his head, hid his grin, then said slowly, "Thank you, Jeon Jungkook." That's no ordinary thank you. Behind those 6 words there is a sense of security. There is a silent hug. There is recognition that in the midst of all the madness of the entertainment world, Jimin still has a place to be himself, and maybe only Jungkook can give her that space. After that night, things did not immediately change dramatically. And yet something settles, something invisible and yet felt. Jimin began to show a more sincere spirit when singing lyrics about hope and togetherness. The look in his eyes while speaking in front of the army became more lively, as if the burden he had kept for a long time had been slightly reduced. On the other hand, Jungkook also looks different. On several occasions behind the scenes, the staff who worked with them noticed that Jungkook was paying more and more attention to Jimin. Not because of suspicion or worry, but more because now he knows how deep and fragile the feelings that have been hidden by Hyung, whom he respects. She began to show the role of a sister who not only follows, but also protects. There was one interesting moment a few days after the incident in the studio that night. During a secret meeting with the producer, while discussing the composition of the title track for BTS's next album, the producer asked Jungkook, "What do you think the bridge should look like?" Instead of answering quickly as usual, Jungkook glanced at Jimin and said, "I think you have something to put in there. There's a lyric he wrote that night. He doesn't know I read it yet, but I think that's what this song needs." All fell silent. Jimin stared at Jungkook for a long time. He knows what he's talking about. It was a scribble of lyrics that he wrote in a notebook, not for publication, not for production. Just emotional writing on a quiet night. And now, her sister wants to make the world hear her. "If you will," Jungkook said softly. "I want to sing it with you." Jimin didn't answer at all. But the look in his eyes said it all, complete trust. And in an instant, that part of the song changed. From just a tone and a word, it becomes a real feeling off stage. The two are indeed more than just co-workers or group mates. They are two souls who have gone through storms together, two sides of a journey that has never been easy. From their first cries in the hostel, from hard training until late at night, from the joy of breaking records to nights like in Los Angeles, where one silent hug can save everything. When BTS's new album was finally released, there was one song that immediately caught ARMY's attention. Not just because of the vocals, not because of the choreography or the extravagant production, but because of the lyrics. Right in the middle of the song, there is a verse spoken almost like a whisper. If you can't speak today, I'll be your voice. And in the last part, there is a harmony between the two voices Jimin and Jungkook uttering together, softly but firmly. Thank you for being here even though the world sometimes doesn't care. Soldiers all over the world are crying. Not everyone knows the story behind it, but they can feel it. Because the honest, born of hurt and love, will always arrive, even if it is not explained, and perhaps of all the songs and stages they have performed, it is the one that is closest to their own hearts. One night, one speech, thank you, Jeon Jungkook. And the world knows, behind the glitter, there is a bond that cannot be replaced by any spotlight. That night, after everything was over, after they left the studio, after the microphones were turned off and the light was dimmed, Jimin and Jungkook sat together on the small balcony of their inn. Los Angeles is not deserted, but where they sit, the night is peaceful. The wind carried the scent of the distant sea, and the clear sky was decorated with clusters of stars that seemed to join in watching their barely audible conversation. Jimin rested his head on Jungkook's shoulder, a simple but meaningful gesture. No one could fully understand what they had experienced over the years other than the two of them. The world sees them as idols, symbols of success, record breakers, but only they know what it's like to lose your grip amid the roar of crowd cheers. I'm afraid, whispered Jimin, almost inaudible. Jungkook didn't ask what he was afraid of. He only responded with a slow sigh and raised his hand, touching Jimin's trembling fingers. Me too, Hyun. I'm afraid this is all temporary. Afraid that one day, you'll get tired of me. This made Jungkook look up. He looked into Jimin's eyes. There are wounds that have not healed there, old wounds that cannot always be repaired by time or popularity. Hyun, Jungkook said quietly, I never stayed here because of the stage or because of the cheers. I survived because of you. Jimin closed his eyes, and for the first time that night, he let his tears fall, not because he was sad, but because he felt heard. Copy that. Loved, not because of who he is in the eyes of the world, but because of who he is in the eyes of someone who truly knows him. And Jungkook, the magne who is often left behind, has now grown into someone who can support. It becomes a wall when everything collapses. It becomes a comfortable space when words are not enough. When the night was over and they went back into the room, their hearts were not fully restored, but lighter. The world can guess what really happened between them, but no one can really know the depth of a relationship that has been built from tears, laughter, and tacit loyalty. A few days later, ARMY was upset by a Weverse upload from Jimin. Not fancy videos or photos. Just a short post. To the person who made me stay, thank you for staying even though I wanted to leave. Followed by a purple heart emoticon, and just a few minutes after that, Jungkook's account appeared in the comments field, writing only one word, forever. No need to explain anymore. They know. ARMY knows. Hearts that love sincerely will always find each other, even in silence, even in the dark, and perhaps the most powerful love is the one that nevertheless chooses to stay unconditionally for no reason. Like Jimin and Jungkook, the next morning, no one knew about the moment. Nothing posted on Weverse, no video footage, no clue on Instagram. But for two men who have walked together for more than a decade, that night was a silent turning point, a night that reminded them that true friendship is not only about performing together on stage, but also being present when there is no stage at all. And for ARMY, who may be wondering why Jimin looked so calm, so peaceful during a live session a few days later, this might be the answer. Perhaps because that night, in an unfamiliar city, someone had become home to him. Thank you, Jeon Jungkook. One sentence, but it contains a story that will never be forgotten.